So, what do you have to be careful about when it comes to investing in annuities? Today, we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Once you get to the site, there is a link at the top of the page that says Ask Prudent Money. Please just click through there, and we'll get you taken care of. Just ask your question, and we'll get right back with you. That's off the website. And while you're there, make sure that you sign up for the Prudent Money email list. This will keep you posted every time we go and post something on the many social media sites that we have. So we'd love to hear from you, and you can get your questions answered, sign up for that list, all at prudentmoney.com. Well, if there's one type of investment that I get the most questions about, it would have to be annuities. And my experience since the early 90s actually has been that people really love them or people really hate them. And so throughout 30 plus years of investing, I've seen this particular industry go through a lot of different phases. And what I would like to attempt to do today is break down a little bit of the details for you, get another look at it so that you know if this is something you're considering doing, why it makes sense, and if it's something that you're not, why it may not make sense. And I think this is the biggest problem that most people have, is they just don't have the information. Well, we're going to clear that up today. Like I said, when it comes to annuities, people really like them, they love them, or they just really hate them. And then I guess there's your third category. They don't really have an opinion one way or the other. They just like what it brings to the table. An annuity is exactly what most people who are conservative, who don't want to lose principal, that's what they go for. And it's because that is really about the only thing that is a solid, guaranteed investment. Now, none of this is said, none of this is communicated with the intent of and notion that you need to go out and put money into annuities. I'm just saying that this is the people who invest in annuities are people who want, very conservative, want protection against losing the principal. And I can't think of really any better investment than that for those particular criteria. Nonetheless, they still love it or hate it. You have to understand what the history is when it comes to annuities to kind of understand why people hate them as much as they do or love them as much as they do. We'll start out with the history of annuities and go back to the late 1990s to kind of describe what was happening there. That was the age of the technology boom, the internet boom, and everybody was making 20+% on their money. And so even though these particular investments called annuities were pretty attractive, and you could get 7 or 8% maybe on these particular investments, they weren't, the sure thing, which was the stock market. So, and I remember looking at it and saying, this isn't really too bad of an investment if you really look at how it's built. But sure enough, there was a lot of things about it that weren't too good. And probably the best way to describe it is that they were recommended by life insurance agents, by a financial advisor, financial planner, community, and the advisors or sales reps or whomever that was actually out presenting them to the prospects that they may have been talking to, they didn't really understand how it worked either. But they certainly did jump on the sales pitch and exaggerate the sales pitch. So the bottom line was the way that these annuities were put together. And we have a version of that today, which I'll get to. The type of annuities that were recommended by most advisors were the equity index annuities. And I'll go ahead and say it right now. I'll get to it a little bit later. But there is another type today that's probably the predominant type of annuity that's being recommended is a fixed index annuity, not an equity index annuity. The equity index annuity, the problem that probably the biggest problem with it is, once again, it was not the details of this as they were recommending it, advisors that is, weren't explaining the downsides to it very well. And they weren't giving the details like they should have been. And so what ended up happening is that you had an investor who's putting money into it, thinking one thing's going to happen when that's the furthest from the truth, and had just no real good understanding. Meanwhile, they're putting money into these guaranteed investments, and the stock market's going crazy. And so it's a situation where people are getting really frustrated. And there was with this equity index model, you had part of it, you could, or one calculation of how it worked, you could see that the annuity was going crazy, and it was getting good returns and building up a value. And so one of the things that was conveniently left out of the presentation was the impact of the surrender charge if you wanted to get out of that particular annuity. So that was the first problem. The second problem was that account inside that annuity that was building and building and building, they made it sound as if, well, you can just get that money anytime that you want to. That wasn't the truth, though. What really the situation is that when you came down to the end of the term, every annuity's got a term that there's surrender charges, so you don't want to pull money out too early. But when you get to that point that you can pull money out, they're looking at this one big account and they're saying, well, give me the big account. I want to transfer it, cash out, whatever they want to do. And the only way that you can get out of that particular contract is to annuitize that contract, which is probably one of the worst aspects of an annuity, is the whole annuitization process. That's when you have $100,000 in the account and you're wanting to cash it out. They'll cash it out, but they'll cash it out to about a third of what the value is, unless you take it out in an income through annuitization. This was probably the worst product. I can only imagine the worst product that was on the market. And can you imagine for a second? You watch this annuity build over time. Let's say that you've got $200,000 in the cash value of this annuity. You're thinking about along the way what you're going to do with that money, how it's built up, how you participate with the market, but you never lose money with the market. I mean, this was kind of a perfect investment, only to find out, and when that day comes that you can get your money, only to find out that there's one of two paths out. You could transfer the money to another IRA or to another bank account or wherever you want to transfer it to, but you only get about 40-50% of the actual money. So you lose a good portion of your money if you want to move it in cash the way it is inside the annuity. So there goes that big number that you've been watching. Or you could annuitize it through the product and take income for the rest of your life. And this was not, if you saw the numbers, you would agree, this is not really a good way to go either. So here you found out something you didn't know, and probably pretty upsetting, I would imagine. So not a good situation. So what ended up happening is that insurance companies got sued, and lots of problems came of the situation. And finally, the insurance industry shut down that product line, and you just don't see them anymore. They came out with this fixed indexed annuity. Now, in the fixed index annuity, and I remember having people from insurance companies come to me and want to sit down and talk to me how these worked, and I had no interest because I watched from afar as a young advisor how bad these products were. But lots of various reps tell me, no, there's nothing like that anymore. And so they really fixed the system, and they came out with this fixed indexed annuity, which was nothing like the equity indexed annuity. But if you heard the word annuity, that was a direct association with annuities in general. So, the walk away was every annuity was bad, and you got to stay away from them because they're all horrible. Well, that's not necessarily the truth, and that's what I want to show you and walk you through on the back half of the program, so that you know, hey, this may be something I want to look at, or this is definitely not a fit for my investment goals. And that's the thing, you got to realize if it's a fit for you or not, and that is the thing that's the most important. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. We're up against a break. Stick around, and I'll be right back. Hello, this is Bob Brooks. Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 are the exact same verse word for word. I call them the stewardship verses of risk. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. On the Prudent Money Radio Show, we teach about risk, how to identify it, how to figure it out, and what to do about it. We believe that to be a prudent steward, you have to be a good risk manager. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show on Bible School Radio 91.3. Prudent Money, home of the modern-day steward movement.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
This is Rob Randall, your host and teacher of the Invisible War radio program. The Invisible War is the study of God's Word on how to walk in Christ's victory in the spiritual battles we face against the powers of darkness. Join me every Sunday morning at 9 right here on KDKR and KYJC in Commerce, your station for life.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Listen, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com and just go to the top of the page. There is a link to a section called Ask Prudent Money. Go ahead and send your question in. We'll get you taken care of. That's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. And while you're there, sign up for the email letter list, and we'll keep you posted on what you need to know. It's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. So I've been talking about history, about annuities, and where we stopped was with the situation with the reputation. So you have an investment called an annuity, or an insurance contract, really is what it should be referred to as, called an annuity, and you've got all these lawsuits going on. You got all these mad investors, and you have the regulators shutting it down. No more of that particular product. So any any types of these companies trying to make insurance companies trying to make a comeback, revitalize it. Tough type situation. And I think there's about 11. You think I'd get to 10, but it's 11. 11 things you need to know. The first one is it's important to understand that the word annuity is not just one thing. That makes up a lot of different strategies. Some may be good, some not so good. But the annuity does not mean, it typically means when people think of annuity, they think of annuitization, which means you take, say, $100,000, you invest it into an annuity, and you have to take out income for the rest of your life. The catch is, if you were to die, say year 1 or year 2, you would lose all the rest of that money. All goes away. That's what people think of when they think of annuities. So the first thing they'll say is, I don't want to lose control of my money. I don't want to put my family into a situation that they'll lose all their money from me, inheritance. And so this is the kind of thing that a lot of people have in their head. Well, it's not that true. And the other thing too is annuitization is really one of those things where it takes an extremely rare, in my opinion, rare situation to make that be the recommendation. So just keep that in mind. The second is the hypothetical illustrations. And basically what this is doing is this is taking a time period and saying to the potential client that this is what the annuity it would have done the last 10 years. And you look at that and you go, boy, those are pretty impressive numbers. There's a lot you need to know about that, a whole lot that you need to know. A hypothetical illustration is done in order to put the annuity in the greatest light possible. And it's showing kind of best case scenario. So the pitch is that the annuity itself is connected to, say, the S&P 500 or the stock market. If the stock market goes up, the annuity goes up. If the stock market goes down, the annuity just doesn't do anything. It just sits still. It doesn't lose money. You can't lose any money with this particular annuity. It makes for a very, very strong marketing pitch that here you can put your money into something, and especially during the 2000s where we've had, great financial crisis, we had the tech bust, and people were liking the fact that, hey, my particular annuity is insured, and it is, not insured. The particular annuity is very, very, very conservative, protects against, guarantees you that you won't lose money. All that sounds great. So that is within the, but you see the hypothetical illustrations, that just tells you could have made this return in the last 10 years, and then you could make another, let's look at the second time period, maybe a third time period, and they all look pretty good. And so you leave the meeting thinking, boy, this is kind of like having my cake and eat it too. Won't lose money, could make 7 to 8% on an average. Not a bad deal. Well, there's a little bit more to it than that. The hypotheticals illustrate something that's not, to a degree, reality, because you can't. What they're doing in these hypothetical illustrations, first thing they're going, say that you're looking at what the last 10 years would have, how that would have worked out if you were in that annuity. Well, you go back 10 years and, hey, that worked out great. Then they repeat that 10 years, and then they repeat that 10 years, which is not even what happened. Wasn't even realistic. See, it's amazing to me how they get away with this. But those hypotheticals look great, but that's not always connected into reality. Then there is guaranteed versus non-guaranteed. And that's a look at the hypotheticals from a different aspect. The guaranteed means that the last 10 years look pretty good as you look at the numbers. But what you could be looking at, though, is once again that non-guaranteed. So if you look at the guaranteed numbers, this is the worst case scenario. This is all guaranteed. You will not get less than this. That means really the way they run them as if you made no money. So you just hit these guaranteed limits and that was it. I personally think, especially when you're talking about from the standpoint of income or that annuity producing income and that type of thing, I think that you really should be looking at all illustrations with that in mind. If you can deal with the guaranteed aspect of it, then if something were not non-guaranteed, you'd be fine with it. If you see exactly what will play out unless you do start making money or something to that degree. I hope that makes sense. The insurance company has the power to change the contract. And there's aspects of that annuity that produce growth. Well, they can always change the way those works every 12 months. And that is what does happen in most cases. So that change could be in the best interest of the investor or not. So that's a real problem. And I don't think discussed enough in real time with clients by most advisors is that they can change the contract. And, think about it. They're not going to be changing it to benefit yourself, I'm sure. You can run out of value. In other words, the cash value can go down to zero. And I guess that is the beautiful thing. I know this doesn't sound like it is, but to have an investment that you could lose all the cash value and still take advantage of the benefits of the investment. And that is really, I think, one of the main things that separates the annuities out. But once again, it's got to be something that makes sense for you, and it's got to be something that is in alignment with your risk level, with your goals, your values, and that kind of thing. Expenses, of course, comes with everything. You want to double check those and make sure that those aren't too excessive. And, how they arrange the cash flow on these annuities, because that's what most people look at. They look at, well, I'm curious as to what is my guaranteed income that I could get from this annuity and how long will it pay? And what most people don't understand is that those income amounts that they're guaranteed to pay for the rest of your life, yeah, it's a great thing, but how do they illustrate it on that, back again to that hypothetical illustration? They might show it as a particular contract when there's three or four different types of contracts. You can arrange these particular hypotheticals. So you got to be really careful about that and how they're arranging the relationship between the annuitant and the co-annuitant makes a big difference. Then, of course, there is the one thing most people don't care for, which is surrender charges. And, of course, those go with any of those types of products that insurance companies market. So obviously these annuities we've been talking about are ones that have a lot of bells and a lot of whistles and a whole lot of detail. You can always look at a fixed annuity, which is like a CD. It pays, say, I think the going rate's 5.5%, which is much better than banks. But they, for a period of time, you can get locked in that rate and benefit from the confidence of knowing that your principal's okay. Of course, unless the insurance company went belly up, which there's insurance for that as well by each state. But there are no gotchas. There's no bells and whistles. Very little fine print on these. I mean, the only thing that you got to know of is there's a surrender charge period that you want to get through. But something that's paying, 5.5, maybe even 6. It's been a long time since we've seen 6%. But it can be a good thing. So that, like I said, that has no bells and whistles on it, nothing to worry about, really. This is Bob Brooks saying you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I think the bottom line is, as we wrap this up, annuities for the right person, the right type of investor can make a lot of sense. You just got to know what you're investing into, how it works, and make sure you're totally fine with that. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you've got a question for me, please go to the website, www.prudentmoney.com, because we are all out of time. Until we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.